I did my project on gamifying my classroom. So gamification of a classroom is including any game-like components into the classroom. It can be big or it can be small. First heard about it in a previous course that we took, just implementing small components like competition or keeping track of points into the classroom. For this project, I researched it for the searching project, and now in the creating project, I wanted to look at it in terms of the whole class being turned into a game. Pros of gamification are typically engagement, and when students are more engaged, that leads to more achievement. And the cons of gamification typically include that it takes a lot of work to create, and it also is not easily transferable. So from job to job or even teacher to teacher, it can be challenging because you do have to recreate the rules and apply it to a different content area. There are lots of ways that this can be implemented, and the way that resonated most with me was this one right here.
It can be a little intimidating on the first day when the professor says you need 1 million points in this class to get an A. Here's all the ways you can get them.
I was both excited, shocked, and I just didn't really know what to think to a certain degree. It's like, wait, so does that mean I'm not getting a grade on each of these assignments? How do I know how well I'm doing?
I was used to coming into a class, being told what to do, and following those rules. Here you really have to take your own initiative.
So while there are pre-made programs that you can buy, and there are different ways that you can go about gamifying your classroom, it dawned on me that no matter what you do as a teacher, you're going to have to make it make sense in your mind. And for me, it made the most sense to just come up with my game based on that loosely, but it was still going to take a lot of cognitive effort on my part. Even if I bought a gamified classroom, I would have to learn the rules of that game, so why not just make them up myself? My current situation, I'm a bit in between jobs as we are in the military and moving again, and I'm due in December, so it's an interesting situation, but I'm pursuing my graduate credit hours in math, so I designed this course for a basic math class at the community college level. So the first lesson that I looked at was learning the game rules. So day one of a course, I'd typically still go over the syllabus, but then I'd also have to introduce how the game works. So just like in that video, I said, okay, you need 1 million points to get an A in that class. When I go over it, I would say, okay, you need 135,000 points to get an A in this class. Lots of people recommended making the course out of total points rather than a percent and using very high values for gamification. So that's kind of why I'm using such a high scale. And XP stands for experience points. It's common in games, so it's common in gamifying a classroom. So once I had decided, okay, my course is going to be out of 150,000 points, I had to figure out how much would each assignment be worth. So to do this, since I've already taught this class before, and last time when I taught it, tests were worth about 40% of the grade. And there were 4 to 5 of them, so each test was worth about 8 to 10%. So I made each boss battle worth about 8 to 10%, which came out to be 12,000 XP. I did the same thing for quizzes or battles and the final, or the ultimate dungeon. Homeworks were worth 750 points, and I also decided for each of those things how many attempts would students get. I also then added in extra assignments, typically the discussion boards, either posting questions or answers, to add elements of choice. So in the course, first they will have to be able to log into Schoology, and that might take a little bit of time. But once there, they can click on Intro to the Game. And then this would be the first day's lessons. So first, it would have an overview of the game in words, which is basically what I just explained. And then also a video that they can watch here, which is just me going over the rules again. If I go back, the next thing they would need to do is an introduction assignment. This would be through my math lab, and that would just be an orientation to what My Math Lab is. So they would need to make sure they can sign into that, make sure they have their access code. That's just a program. It's through Pearson. It provides practice problems. As a teacher, I can designate which problems are on and how many there are for each assignment. And then students also need to post in the intro discussion. So the purpose here is that they can get to know each other a little bit, say your name, your major, where you're from, what you like to do on the weekends. But also, it will make sure that students know how to upload videos. So here's a sample video uploaded, a sample question, and it is embedded in the discussion board. A lot of students may not have uploaded videos before, so I included a little help page just for that with written instructions as well as video instructions and an embedded video of how to put the screencast into the discussion board. That way students know how to post questions and answers, and they're more likely to engage in those activities. Last thing they will do on this lesson is do an introduction battle. Battle, again, is like a quiz. It's just really basic, going over the syllabus. Can you redo assignments? How many XP are possible for completing a battle? Just to make sure that they know kind of the structure of the course and how things are going, but it also gives them practice of how they will complete battles in the future. So that is the first day's lesson. The next day would be a little bit more typical of the rest of the semester. Since it's gamified, students don't necessarily have to do this lesson next, but for the purpose of this assignment, I just chose one potential starting point. I would try to have 2 to 3 quests available for students to choose from day one, but not necessarily all of them, because that's something that teachers pointed out is if you give students too much choice, it can be overwhelming and they can get lost within the course. So these right here would be the objectives for that day's lesson. And then students would have different possible activities for mastery. They can play pre-test games and see if they already feel comfortable with the content. They can watch a video explanation or a micro lecture. They can practice on My Math Lab, or they can post to the discussion forum. In a typical class, they would get the lecture and the practice. So the other things are optional, but it is recommended that students earn 750 to 1,000 XP per lesson. So over here in Schoology, if they chose to work on the fraction quest, again, there might be more quests available going down on day one, but if they chose the fraction quest, they would click on step 1. Again, here's those same objectives. And then they can see, okay, what do I already know? If they want to just click on this game, if they already know how to do that, they might feel confident and just ready to skip to the next portion. Going back. If they don't remember fractions at all, I highly recommend that they watch the content refresher, a little micro lecture. It's a whiteboard lesson through EduCreations that I made that covers all the same content that I would have typically covered in a standard classroom. And then they can go into My Math Lab and practice. And then there is another discussion board. And by this point, students should know how to upload both their questions as well as their explanations. If a student already knows the content, they can get 1,000 points by becoming the teacher. So they could potentially skip doing the entire homework assignment and become the teacher and show their expertise in that way. To master a quest, so in order to master that entire fraction quest, they would have to complete all the different steps as well as a battle and a boss battle. And then that would be considered beat, and students could potentially unlock another level. I can't give up deadlines entirely due to an experience that I had working in a school where all students were allowed to move at their own pace and most students chose a pace of 0. Deadlines will probably be every 2 to 3 weeks and will require successful completion of a quest. Students will have to tell me which quest they were working on and then no longer be able to earn more credit for that unit. After a couple months, all quests of a certain level may no longer earn points, but I would still leave them available if a student wanted to get caught up. I can't give up deadlines entirely, though, because I can't watch students choose to do nothing for too long. Also, it helps students monitor themselves and gives them some kind of benchmarks for where they should be and when. Reflections about this project. I did consider including an in-game currency. This was another common suggestion from people who had already gamified their classroom. I wanted to tie it in, but it just seemed like extra, something more for the sake of having something more. Also, it seemed a bit juvenile for community college level to be able to buy perks like sitting in a teacher's chair or something. And management at that level, it's not as much of an issue. Strengths of my course, I thought that I had a very strong element of choice. Students could choose not only which assignment or which quest they were working on and when, but they could also choose which assignments they completed entirely. I also think that the value of assignments greatly affected the success of the course. So students won't be able to skip tests or quizzes, which will be proctored in the classroom. So they will have to make sure that they are ready to master the material. My biggest weakness was in the promotion system. When students go from a deckhand to chauffeur, so what? A lot of times different gamified systems allow you to promote your avatar or to move up on a progress bar. In an elementary school, you can display a giant progress bar on the wall, but at the community college level, classrooms change all the time. So what does that look like? This is where purchasing software might be beneficial, but if I could find a way to tie this in through the Schoology platform that I already had, I think that would be beneficial. So I'm done with this project, but I'm not fully done thinking about it. A lot of work would still need to go into this before being ready. My hope is that engagement would increase within my classroom, but it can be really hard to tell before diving in. With the right attitude and context, it could be really fun, not only for the students, but also for myself, making the time and the extra work worth it in the end.